questions to that?
All set, Steve.
Thank you, Anna. So welcome to this afternoon's SharePoint Level 100 session. My name is Steve, and I do work for Microsoft. Today, we're going to be doing an overview of what SharePoint functionalities you gain in primarily team sites. We are going to talk briefly about communication sites as well. And we're going to talk about that integration between Teams and SharePoint and how they work together, as well as the different cloud storages that are currently available to you. So you have OneDrive, you have SharePoint, and you have Teams. And I'll give you some guiding principles on just the differentiations between each one. I have a very brief PowerPoint to go through just to explain some terms and give some guidance around some items. I am also joined today by a few of my coworkers, Anna and Gabe, who will be in the chat to help answer questions throughout the session. I do also pause, so if you'd rather come off mute and ask those questions at that time, you're more than welcome to, as well as Joanne is here from your organization to help with those internal questions and discussions. We do want these sessions to be highly interactive, so do feel free to ask any or all questions that you do have. Again, we're going to be talking about navigating SharePoint Online today. We're going to talk about documents and libraries, and that's the file storage in SharePoint. And those are primarily used in those Teams collaboration sites. We are also going to talk about working with shared resources and some of the best practices around that, and talking about how you use communication sites to better put out information for people to consume. So the communication sites are more geared towards information consumption, whereas those team sites are really for that collaboration and creation portions. So what is SharePoint? SharePoint is a cloud storage that allows you to organize intelligently and unify and inform and empower your users around different items. Now, an important thing to know, and I will show this, is that you get a SharePoint site with each team that you get requested. So I'll show how that functionality works and what that looks like. We're going to talk about engaging around those communication sites just for their use cases. We're not going to spend a lot of time on communication sites. We're also going to spend a good amount of time talking about the sharing portions and how to securely share those different files inside of those team sites. And harnessing that collective knowledge for that shared and collaborative functions, as well as the powerful items that allow you to search for documents so you don't need to look for individual items. There are business process flows that are available inside of SharePoint. We don't cover them in this session, but they do automate some functions inside of SharePoint. But it is important to know that they are available. Now, we're going to talk about your migration plan, because currently you use some on server storage, and we're going to talk about the 3 different storages. So the uses in OneDrive. OneDrive is really built to be your files. And the reason you use OneDrive is it allows you to have the automatic backup functionalities and store your files. You can still share out of OneDrive. But if the primary use of a file is that more collaborative resource or reference material, they really should be stored in Teams or SharePoint. Now, that being said, the reason being is that you can share items to 2, 3, 4, 5 people in OneDrive, But if those 5 people are all in your team, you could simply upload that file into Teams to have that access granted automatically. So it's a lot less maintenance on that portion, as well as those SharePoint files for that, again, broader use and referencing materials. So that is the primary differences between each one of those. Now, in your migration plan, you can see that your personal files, so those are the files on your computer, your personal network file share, your home drives, flash drives, and external hard drives, and email attachments are going into OneDrive. And your team files, so those public and shared drives, are migrating into both Teams and SharePoint. Again, because of those differentiations, you should have your personal files in your personal cloud storage, which is that OneDrive, whereas your team files are migrating into their appropriate teams or their appropriate team sites. And those internet-wide files are going on that more public SharePoint, again, because multiple people and even maybe multiple organizations need access to those same files for their access. Are there any questions on the 3 different clouds and when you should use each one, or further explanations that anyone is looking for on that? I am not seeing any questions come through in chat, so I'm going to go ahead and continue, and we're going to dive right into our demonstration next. So I'm going to go ahead and exit out of my PowerPoint. Can everyone see my web browser window okay, or do I need to make it any larger for this afternoon session? I'm getting some thumbs up reacts. Love it. Thank you, everyone. The first item before we go into navigating SharePoint is, as you're already using Teams, what I want to show you. So I'm going to go into Teams here. And what I'm in is a Files tab inside of Teams. In the Files tab, you should see an Open in SharePoint button. Now, depending if you're zoomed in further in Teams, it may be collapsed under an additional ribbon where there's 3 dots or ellipses that you have to click on to see this. But when you open in SharePoint here, this is a SharePoint team site that is connected to that team. And that's just an important item to understand. All the files that are in Teams are stored and saved in SharePoint. So you can access and create files from this site and they would show up in the team. And every time you're accessing and working on files in the team, they're also going to SharePoint. So that is an important piece of functionality to know and understand. But if I needed to access SharePoint sites altogether, I generally start from going from portal.office.com and signing in with those work credentials. On your left-hand navigation bar, you should see a SharePoint icon, and that's the S with the 3 green circles. When you click on this, you'll be brought to the SharePoint homepage. In this SharePoint homepage, you'll get a list of different sites you're following, and I can show you how you follow those this afternoon to have those kind of personalized bookmark pages for those ones you frequently go to. You'll also see any you've accessed recently. From here, I'm going to start with the communication site. And if I go to the communication site, it's going to open up in that tab for me. To follow a communication site, you'll see a little star in the upper right-hand corner that just says following. And again, that functionality just adds it into those followed sites. Now, in these communication pages, they're really primarily designed for that information consumption. So you can use these as news sites around an organization for information that you're trying to get out into the public. You can also make a communication site around a project to share that news information. but they primarily are resolving around different news articles. You do have access to documents, but in a communication site, you shouldn't necessarily be creating and collaborating on files. That's really what those team sites are for. You can also, depending on your levels of access, be able to create items within that communication site. So you can make news posts, and news posts are news updates from here that you would see news update. Hello, this is the test web part. And it would bring you into that news article when you click on that item. So you can see that right here, this is that news article. So you make those articles and those pages to be able to access that different information. If I wanted to quickly navigate back to my main SharePoint page, I can just click SharePoint in the upper left. And that's going to bring me back to that SharePoint homepage. Are there any questions on the communication sites or the integration between Teams and that SharePoint site before I dive into that full Teams SharePoint walkthrough this afternoon? Again, I am not seeing any questions in chat, but I do just want to make sure that they are answered. I shall continue then. We're going to go into my file demo site that I have created. And this is a SharePoint team site. Now these team sites have many different tabs down the left-hand side. We're going to go through each one and go over some layout items as well. You can see that again, you have that following star right here that allows you to add it to that favorite section. And we are on the home tab currently. So these home tabs can be customized from their initial generalized layout. We don't go through customizing those in today's session, but just know that these are customizable. You can see we have a place to add news, a quick shortcut over here to access those document libraries. And those document libraries are where you create, collaborate, and store files. And when you're storing them in these document libraries, they are instantly accessible to everyone that has access into this SharePoint site. So these SharePoint sites are primarily created as private groups. So you add 3, 4, 5 people into it, and only those people will have access to it. You can make them public, and then everyone within your organization would have access to it, but that is a very infrequent use case. You'll also see activity, and activity will give you a insight into what is happening on the team site. So you can see right here, we have shared documents. We made documents, we made a PowerPoint, and then our site was created as I made it for today's session. Next, we have the Conversations tab. And this Conversations tab brings us to a Outlook page. It's going to think for a minute. Because when you make these SharePoint team sites, it is creating an Outlook group email for that shared mailbox. So you can email that group email box to have that communication around that project. We'll go ahead and go back. Next, we have our documents, and this is a document library. Now, in SharePoint, you can have multiple document libraries for different uses. Maybe you want extra degrees of separation between certain documents. In the way this is set up right now, I only have that singular document library, but I'll show near the end of the session how you could create that additional document library if you needed it. But when you're in that Documents tab in SharePoint, you'll see your folders. You'll see files that have been created and that you have access to. But not only can you view and collaborate on these files right from here, I can make a whole new document. So I can click here. I could make additional folders just like on my computer. I could create a Word, or I'll make an Excel. Let's make an Excel. It is going to open up automatically into the web version of Excel. So just like that, I've created an Excel document. I can work on it right from here. It has automatically saved it to the place that I was in. And if I wanted to change the name, because it does go to default names, so you can see right now it's just named book up here in the upper left, I can click the drop down and I will call this afternoon demo. It will show you where it's saved, and to simply rename it, I can now click out of it. So there is no save button when you're working in these SharePoint files. It's automatically saving back to SharePoint and creating different versions as well, which I'm going to be covering shortly. Now, an important item to know when you're opening and working with these files in SharePoint is if it opens in the web version and there's functionality that is more advanced. So you have macros in Excel or maybe advanced formats in PowerPoint, and they're not working in the web version. I can open these in the desktop version and they're still going to save automatically back to SharePoint. You would do that either by clicking on the file and then clicking the Open in Desktop application right from here, or from that file. So for example, the document, if I click on it, I'll have an open menu, and here I can open right in the desktop application if I know I'm going to need that functionality anyways. But it's not just creating files within SharePoint. You can also upload. So if you need to upload a file from your computer or an entire folder, you could do that. Now, again, keep in mind when you're uploading these files to SharePoint that everyone in that team site is going to get access to it as soon as it is opened. So if you're trying to back these up through the cloud and you want to, they're more personal files, this is when you would want to use that OneDrive instead of SharePoint. I can also simply open a file. So if I go into my new project demo PowerPoint from here, I can go ahead and open this file. And it is going to bring me right into the editor. I can sit here and I can make new slides. And I can be real-time collaborating with other users within this PowerPoint. So while I'm here, if someone were to join me, they would show within the icon that they had joined in. And we would see them real-time editing within the file. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start putting in some pictures from here. I'll go ahead and insert a picture. We'll go with stock images. Better put the flower in, and I will insert. We'll go ahead and throw a title on it very fast. I am doing that. I can also communicate inside of this file with my other users. So you can do that through this comments tab. Now this comments tab allows you to have that back and forth conversation right inside of the file. So you can see right from here, I could make a new comment right from here. And I could, let's say, @mention my other user. So just like in Teams, you can use @mentions. So I can @mention Boston Hub user 2. Can you help me with the new project presentation? And I can send that off right from here. Now we can see that my other user has joined me in this file, and we're real-time working on this file together. So they're editing that slide, and I can tell they're here because of their indicator icon here. I also have the indicator icon right here, and it will let me quickly go to their location. So I can go to location, and it will bring me to what they're doing. Now, these collaboration functions do have some minor limitations around what items you're allowed to collaborate on at the same time. So for example, in PowerPoint, because they're editing the title, I can't change this right now. And in Excel, you can't do things like change the same cell as someone else. And in Word, you can't edit the same individual Word item from there. But were there any questions around creating or collaborating on files? You can still use track changes within Word documents and those items, and it is under the review to get those more in-depth changes if you try to track those. And that is another item I like to point out. I am not seeing any questions in the chat. So the last largest advantage of creating these items in SharePoint is that autosave functionality. So it is creating different versions of this file as we're working on it in real time with autosave. So to access those versions, I can either open the file, I can click the drop down, and I can click on this version history. Now this version history is going to show me each time this file was opened, changed, and saved. So we can see I have the just now versions or the 4 hour ago one. We can see if I click through these, as I click through these items, it's going to show you that that one was empty. This one, we did some work on it earlier. And this is really powerful in that, let's say you've been working on a project and you open it up the next day and half of the information is now missing, or you open up that Excel and those advanced formulas are not working the way they're supposed to. You can go into these versions and you'll notice as I select these older versions, I get two different options. So I could save a copy, and that's very useful if I needed to, let's say, test the file before I restored to it because it's that Excel and I want to make sure the formulas work in this one. I can also restore right from here. So if I go into here and I click restore, it's going to think for a minute. And now it has restored it back to that file option. Now it does create separate versions when you do those restores. So if I go into the version history, those old versions are still accessible within this list. So maybe I have an instance where this is that Excel and I don't want people accessing the broken version or accidentally restoring it to that portion. I have another way to access this version history, and it is outside of the document. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to close this PowerPoint. And to access the other version of version history, you use the ellipses next to each of the files. So if I click these right from here, I will go through each of these different options, but right now I want to show you the version history right here. So I can click version history here, and it's going to show me each of those individual versions that are available. Now, in this instance, I have a drop down next to each version that's available. So I can click that drop down. I could view it, I could restore it, but I can also delete the versions. So again, it gets rid of those bad versions that I don't want people using within a file. So I can go ahead and I can delete this. Maybe that is the bad version. When you do delete any item in SharePoint, it's not instantly forever deleted. It does go to a site recycle bin, and I am going to cover that recycle bin near the end of today's session. But you can see it does prompt me that, am I sure I want to send this version to the site recycle bin? And I will say, okay. We'll also have additional options around here where you can edit it in a grid view. You can sync a document library to your local file explorer, and that just allows you to access those files without having to navigate out to the SharePoint site. It just adds it as a shortcut. They are still saved in SharePoint, and you do need to be connected to SharePoint to be able to access them. You can also add a link to your OneDrive. You can export this to an Excel, which is just the list, and that's all that item is. And we don't cover Power Apps or Power Automate in today's session. The last few items along the top bar are you have the ability to choose some viewing modes. So you can see I have list, I have compact list, and I have tiles. And that is just whatever best suits your needs. I'll go back into list though. I also have filters that are available within this document library. So if I click on filters, you can see I can filter just what it's displaying me within the SharePoint. So if I know there was a file, but maybe I don't know the name of it, this is one way to search the document library and filter around those items. I am going to showcase search at the end of today's session, and that is, in my opinion, a far easier way to find files than using filter, but you should know that this is here. I'll go ahead and close that though. As you saw, the top menu does change when you select a file. So you can see, again, I get that open option. I can share, and I'm going to talk about share at the very last item in the document library. I can download a file, and that allows me to create a offline separate version of this specific file. So that file is not going to sync with the original SharePoint, but if you needed to, let's say, put it into a thumb drive and bring it somewhere for some reason, that is how you would create those separate copies. Again, I have that option to delete the entire file, so I can delete it right from here. Again, we're warned that it's going to go to that site recycle bin. I will go ahead and click delete. I can also pin an item to the top. That just allows it into this shortcut area. So if this file list is really long and I don't want to have to hunt for those files, I can just pin them. I can rename right from here if I needed to change the name of a file. I can also move to. So maybe this file isn't in the right place and I need to move it into a folder. Right from here, I can click move to. You can move it to the SharePoint sites that you have access to. But I'll go with current library, and then I'm going to move that into the projects folder. So I will just click move here, and it will move that item through. I will replace that as it is warning me that there's a document with the same name. Now, the other option, and it's just not showing on this bar because I'm zoomed in, is the ability to copy to. There it is. Now, copy to does the same itemization that move to does, except it does create that separate copy of that file. So again, you're duplicating that file, so they're not going to sync, but maybe you need a file from, let's say you have a templates directory where you keep all your standard need to fill out templates, and now you need to have a copy of that in one of the active working directories. That's a great use case around copy to. So I could copy this too. Again, it's going to ask me where I want to copy it to. I could just say current library, and I'm going to copy it to that main folder. So I'm going to click copy here. Now I've gone into a folder inside of SharePoint. You can see that there's a navigation bar, and as you go through each individual folder inside of SharePoint, this title bar will grow, and you can quickly navigate within the document library just by clicking on where you want to go in it. So even if you were 5, 6 folders deep and you needed to go back to the third folder, you could just click on it right from there and it would bring you back. Now, all of those options are also available from the ellipses on each file, so you can access them in whatever way best suits you. So if I click on these ellipses, I can see I have that open, I have preview again, I have share and manage access, which is the very next item we're going to cover today. Download, delete, rename, move. One of the items that is available through here is Alert Me. Now, what Alert Me does is it allows you to get notifications on a file. And this is set on a per user, per file or folder basis. So you are setting these for yourself, not the whole group, unless you add multiple people to this contact email. That is an important item to know, where you can see that it's going to send emails. You can even have it send you texts around the files. And it does have different settings on when those alerts trigger. So if someone else changes the document, someone else changes the document created by me, or someone else changes the document last modified by me. And then you can choose when to send those alerts. Again, just before I go into sharing, I did want to pause to see if there were any questions on anything I've covered up until this point. I am still not seeing any in chat, but if you'd rather come off mute, you're more than welcome to. I will continue then. So next we're going to be talking about sharing in SharePoint. So again, we know there's a few different ways to access that sharing button. I can get it from here. There's a quick access to share right from here. And I can do it from the ellipses. When I go to share these files, I'm greeted with the sharing settings window. So the default is that people in my organization with a link can access it, but I can change these settings just by clicking on this top bar. What this allows me to do is set people with existing access. So that's everyone that's a part of the SharePoint site from here. But maybe I need to share it with specific people. You'll also be given options around whether or not people are allowed to edit what you're sharing with them. So maybe you need to share that document out just as reference, but the people you're sharing it with, you don't want them to be able to modify the original one. That is when you would just uncheck this, and now it is not able to be edited. You can also even then block the ability for them to download the file. So again, they would get that web link and it opens in a web browser. So when you're sharing these items, they don't need Word or Office. They just need a computer with a web browser that supports Office Online, and they could work on those documents. So I'll go ahead and block the download on this share link, and I'll go ahead and click apply. Now I need to say who I'm sharing it with because I selected that as specific people. I can just type and it will automatically populate people from within my organization. If you are sharing to external people, you do need to put in their email address into there. But I'll go ahead and I'll put in Boston. I'll share this with user 2. I can share it to multiple people. So again, I'll put in Boston user 4. And now I can click send with a message that I could send to them to let them know I'd shared the file. Or if I needed to, let's say, put that link into an email or a Teams message, I can click copy link right from here. Again, because I set this to just specific access, only these people can open the file, even if that link got forwarded to someone else. So I'll just click copy link from here. And now that link is active and able to be shared. But I'll close this one for right now. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to share it again because maybe I need to also share this with someone and give them the ability to edit it. So again, I'm going to go into here. I'll click that share button. I'll go back into here very quickly and just click specific people. And I'll allow editing on that one. And again, I'll share it with Boston. We'll go with the regular one. And I'm not going to include a message in this, and we'll just click copy link to have the share link. So now that I've shared that file out with these individual users, we want to talk about how you manage what is shared. Because maybe the people don't need it for reference anymore, or that one person that I shared that edit link with has added the portions into it that I need them to, and I just don't want them having further access to that file at this time. I can click the ellipses on the document again, and this is where we go into manage access. When I manage access on that file, we're going to see each link that has been sent and what the different items that link allows people to do. In instances where you've shared it with multiple people, you can see I get this little drop down next to the people's names right here. If I click on that, it will list each one of my users next to the share link. And this allows me to remove individual users at a time from the share link. So maybe that person doesn't need access to it anymore because they're done with it. I can just click the X and it's going to remove that user's access and it will prompt me. I can also completely invalidate share links. So this will remove everyone's access that uses that link to that file. And to do that, I simply click again the ellipses, the three dots, next to the link that has been shared. So I can click more options here. And now I click that X next to the link to remove it. It will say, are you sure you want to delete this link? Anyone that uses this link to gain access to this file is going to be affected. And I am just going to click delete link. So I could remove this one as well in that same fashion right from here. Again, just remove the link. There is also this stop sharing button inside of SharePoint, and I always strongly caution against using stop sharing because it removes all sharing permissions around that file, including the people within that SharePoint site. So as you're going through and using those individual links, just make sure you're removing those links and not clicking that stop sharing button. I do always pause here to see if there are any questions on functionality or use cases around sharing. I can make it a little larger for you, absolutely. Let me know if that's okay. I can zoom in further too if it's needed.
I think maybe one more. Yeah, that's great. Thanks.
Oh, you're very welcome. But I have not seen any further questions come in around sharing, so we'll go through the rest of the tabs that are available inside of SharePoint. You'll have shared with us. And in this shared with us, this would display any documents or files that had been shared into the group. So again, for that group email, it is a valid way to share items, and they would be just listed here. You'll also have Notebook. And that notebook is just a OneNote notebook that is also tied into that same notebook from Teams. If you wanted to have that OneNote collaboration space to maybe take those notes or use for planning. I'll go ahead and click back from here. You'll also have Pages, and we don't go deeply into Pages in the level 100 session, but know that you have that ability, just like in those communication sites, to create those different pages for those different purposes. So if you find you need a lot of information on that main page and it's just become too cluttered, you can make those additional pages, but we do dive into that in the 200 session. I'm going to skip employee onboarding, but I will come back to that. The same item applies to site contents. That site contents is every individual part that makes up this SharePoint site. And again, we take a deeper dive into that in the 200 level content. The very last item is that recycle bin. And again, this recycle bin is automatically defaultly going to be set to retain items here for 60 days. If you needed to recover a document that you'd accidentally deleted, you can come into here and select it. You can see I also get a restore button here, and it's going to put that back exactly where it started from. So it will tell you the path that it's going to go to. You can also permanently delete items out of here. If you just click delete, it will remove it from the end user's recycle bin, and I can click delete from here. And you could empty the recycle bin as well. I did say I was going to come back to employee onboarding, which I'm going to. Employee onboarding was an added feature, and this is what's called a list. So a list is a way in SharePoint to store data outside of a file. So lists allow you to do different creation processes, and I'll show you how to add these lists and some of the other items very briefly. I'm going to go into the Home tab, and in the Home tab, I have this New button. When I click this New button, I'm granted a few different options. So I have the ability to create lists. I have the ability to create those separate document libraries. So let's say you want to be able to separate the document storage even further. So I have a new project that I want. I can create new and do new document library, and I will call this project B. I could give it a description for what it's going to be used for, but for now, I'm just going to click create. You can see project B will show up in the navigation bar, and this is another place to store those documents within here. So you can see they're just completely separate. There are other reasons to use separate document libraries because you can control different permissions on the files. Again, we don't go heavily into that in the 100 level content, but I wanted you to know that it was available and an option. You also can create, again, those pages and those news lists. You have access to some different applications like Plan, apps, but I'm going to create a list. And creating lists, it allows users to have an easy way to input data into a format that you want to be able to very muchly control. So if I go into this list, I could, let's say, make an event itinerary. This is the template. I'll click use template. Again, it's asking if I want to show it in the site navigation, and I could give it a description in addition, and I'll just click create. I could change the name if I wanted. Now, lists are made up of different columns, much like in Excel. And you can add and customize these columns. I'm not going to go through each individual item on here because we do an entirely separate course just on lists. But know that these columns can be added for what kind of information that you're looking for. So single lines of text, multiple lines of text, maybe numbers, yes, nos, those different items. And when users go to enter information into this list, all they do is go into the list and click this new button. And it's giving them boxes around each different item and what they need to enter for those items. So we could say session name main. And we can see the different items that are required. I won't fill all of these in. I'll say 100. You can set each individual item being required or not. I'll click save. And now it just puts that entry into the list. And the list would just grow and grow as we put additional information in. The very last item around today's session is really how to find your files inside of SharePoint and how to find them even within your organization. So we can see if I click into this document library and I go into my search, I can type what I'm looking for. So maybe I need project. I can just That we can see I have projects from here. I have my new project demo, and I can click see more results. Now that is just searching within that document library because I had it selected. You can do the same search functionality from your home, and it's searching the entire site. So if you have those multiple document libraries or those news articles that you want to be able to search, I can type here, and maybe I want to look for project here. The items are going to return very similarly. We can see I have that project B SharePoint site though as well. We'll also have the ability to filter within here. So we can filter by different file types. So I can filter to a PowerPoint, a Word, or an Excel. So if I only want to see Excels and I click apply, it's going to say I don't have any Excels for that. I can also just search for PowerPoints, and I know it will filter that for me. It will also have the ability to just look at files. And again, we have those filters right from here. And sites as well as news. Now, that is only searching this one SharePoint site. You can see in the search bar right here, this is just my file demo site. I can also search my entire organization. When I click on that, it's going to search everything that I actually have access to from here. So you can see that there's a Mark 8 project team. We have a few different projects. Again, I can look at files and filter that the same way. Now this search is only going to reveal what I have access to. So it's not like you can search all of SharePoint for items you wouldn't have access to already. But with that being said, that does bring me to the end of the planned content for today. Were there any questions on anything I covered or anything you were hoping I would cover that I didn't? Because I am more than happy to dive into any of those items.
Great, thanks, Steve. This is Joanne. I don't know if you mentioned it, so I apologize if you did. And is there any file size limitation or type limitation?
So you can put any file into SharePoint. You can only edit first party Word, Excel, PowerPoint items. Now, in terms of file limitations, when you're using them to, let's say, send it as an attachment, that's a great way to bypass those large PDFs that are very challenging to send through Outlook email. When you share it through SharePoint, you don't encounter that because you're not actually sending them a copy of the file. It's more like you're sending them directions to where they can access the file. So that link is not the actual file. When they click it, it's going to open in their web browser, and it's going to allow them to access those larger files that are those more challenging email attachment items.
That's how it functions if I'm sharing the document with people outside of Commonwealth of Mass as well, right?
Yes.
Okay, great. Anyone else? Now's your time. You've got 8 free minutes with someone from Microsoft on SharePoint. No? Okay, well, then a couple of things to follow up. Thank you, first of all, Steve. This was great. I hope everyone enjoyed this and got something out of it. And Steve mentioned or referenced 200 SharePoint 200 class that goes a little bit more, correct me if I'm wrong, into, setting permissions and things like that, kind of administering the site. So we have not scheduled those, but please let me know if you're interested. Well, actually, we're going to schedule them anyway, so I will get those scheduled for a little later on, probably mid-August or so, and I'll be able to share that invite with everyone as well, the same way we did for this. Okay. The, I was just gonna say that, Kim. Kim just asked where the file will reside. So it's a great question. I'm going to, obviously, from the chat, I am gonna have it saved as a YouTube video and I'll post it to the Champion team site, okay?
We will go ahead and stop the recording at this time.